The woman who wanted my life was already in my house. When my sister-in-law Abby moved in, I thought I was helping her. She had just gone through a tough divorce, and she needed a place to stay. I wanted to be kind, to offer her a fresh start in a safe and loving home. But soon I started to notice things that didn't feel right. At first, it was small things that seemed harmless. She borrowed my sweaters without asking, started drinking the same kind of coffee I always ordered, and even picked up some of my little habits. It was almost flattering, like she admired me. But then it became more than that. She started speaking like me, using the same phrases I did. She changed her hairstyle to match mine. When something funny happened, she laughed exactly like I did. Same tone, same rhythm, like an echo. I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe she was just picking things up from being around me all the time. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the strange feeling that something was off. Abby wasn't just settling in. She was slipping into my space, my routine, my life. It was as if I wasn't just helping her get back on her feet. I was watching her slowly become me. I still remember the day she arrived. She had 3 suitcases, a bottle of red wine, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. My husband, Michael, was the one who invited her to stay. Just for a little while, he assured me as he started setting up the air mattress in the guest room. She needs somewhere to land. She's been through so much. I don't even know half of it. I didn't argue. She was family after all. I spent the afternoon clearing out the guest room, making sure it was comfortable for her. I changed the sheets, fluffed the pillows, and even placed a vase of fresh flowers on the nightstand to make the space feel warm and welcoming. But even as I prepared the room, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. A sense of unease settled deep in my stomach, and I couldn't understand why. It wasn't like me to feel this way about helping someone, but something about Abby's presence, about her being in my home, made me feel like I was giving up more than just space. I was giving up something else, something I couldn't quite name. At first, everything seemed fine. Abby had taken time off from work, so she spent most of her days at home. She played board games with my older daughter, Lily, and sat at the kitchen table drawing fairies with my younger one, Ella. She even cooked dinner a few times, which was a nice break for me. She was friendly, always complimenting my clothes or asking about my skincare routine. She seemed truly interested in my life, and I told myself this was a good thing. She was just adjusting, finding comfort in being around family. That's what I wanted, right? For her to feel safe, to heal. But then, little things started happening. Small things, but enough to make me pause. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw her standing by the coffee pot, wearing my robe. "Oh," I said, caught off guard. She turned around, smiling. "It was just hanging in the laundry room," she said casually. "I didn't think you'd mind. It was just a robe. Just a simple, everyday thing." And yet it made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't quite explain. Then I started noticing other things. The way she watched me, not just in passing, but really watching, studying me. The way I packed my daughter's lunches, how I laid out their clothes the night before school, the little habits that filled my day. And then she started copying them. It wasn't immediate, but a second too late, I would notice her doing things exactly as I did them. It was as if she was trying on a new identity, testing it out to see how well it fit. And then came the lasagna. It was my recipe, every step of it. The same ingredients, the same fresh basil from our garden. But somehow hers tasted better. Michael took one bite and practically melted into his chair. "Wow," he said, turning to Abby. "This is amazing. I think you might have just stolen the title of best cook in this house." I laughed along with them, but something inside me twisted. That night, she read my daughters their bedtime story. Not just any bedtime story, the one I always read to them. And as I stood outside their door, waiting for them to call me in like they always did, I realized something. They didn't ask for me. Not once. Over time, she started joining my yoga classes. She bought leggings identical to the ones I wore to class. She started wearing my exact perfume. She even got the same phone case as me. Sometimes I caught her standing in front of the hallway mirror, tilting her head and fixing her hair until it looked just like mine. It felt like a slow erasure, like I was disappearing piece by piece. Then, one night at dinner, it happened. We were sitting around the table, passing plates of food, when Ella suddenly turned to Abby and called her mom. I froze. "Oh," Abby said, laughing lightly. Ella's eyes went wide and she quickly covered her mouth. "Oops! Sorry, Mommy," she giggled. "It just slipped out." Michael chuckled and reached for his drink. "Aunts are like second moms, aren't they?" he said, brushing it off like it was nothing. Abby just smiled, adding more asparagus to her plate. "I'm just so grateful for you all," she said warmly. "I don't know where I'd be without you." I didn't say a word for the rest of dinner. The next week, I finally decided to talk to Michael about how I felt. But Michael didn't take me seriously. "She admires you," he said with a Shrug. She's just trying to rebuild her life. Maybe she doesn't know who she is without Jared. I shook my head, my hands tightening into fists. She's not borrowing from me, I said slowly, trying to make him understand. She's becoming me. Michael let out a sigh, rubbing his forehead. She's been through a lot, Sasha. She's lost everything. Can't you have some compassion? Compassion. That's what he wanted from me. But what about me? What about the way I felt in my own home? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my thoughts running in circles. My stomach twisted with unease, but I had no proof of anything. It was all just little things that no one else seemed to notice. So I started keeping a list. I grabbed my phone and began typing out everything I had noticed. The perfume, the boots, the way she laughed exactly like me at something Ella said. Each day the list got longer. One evening, after a long school meeting, I came home later than usual. The house was quiet and the lights were dimmed. As I set down my bag and kicked off my shoes, I noticed something strange. Abby was sitting on the couch flipping through my wedding album. I stopped in my tracks. She was wearing my pajamas. She was drinking from my wine glass. My throat went dry. "You looked so happy, Sasha," she said softly, not even looking up. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay calm. "That's because I was," I said cautiously. Abby turned another page, her fingers running over a photo. "I never had that with Jared," she murmured. I convinced myself that watching love was the same as having it. She wasn't crying. She should have been. But she wasn't, and that scared me more than anything. A few nights later, I woke up feeling thirsty. The house was quiet and everyone was asleep. I slipped out of bed and made my way to the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when I noticed it. A light. It was coming from my office. I frowned, my heart beating a little faster. I hadn't left it on. Slowly, I stepped closer, peeking inside. Abby was sitting on the couch, my journal open on her lap. She didn't look up. "You don't lock this?" she asked, flipping a page like she had every right to be reading it. "It's so personal." My breath caught in my throat. My hands clenched at my sides. "I wanted to understand you," she continued, her voice calm. "You always seem so certain. I wanted to know how you think, how you work. Something inside me shifted. Fear, anger, confusion. She closed the journal and placed it on the table beside her. Then, just as if nothing had happened, she stood up and left the room. I stood frozen in place long after she was gone. That night, when I heard her leave for her usual evening walk, I made a decision. I went into the guest room, her room. I hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. My heart pounded in my ears as I moved toward the closet. I opened it slowly. There, beneath her bags, was a small shoebox. I reached for it with trembling hands. When I lifted the lid, I felt the air leave my lungs. Inside, there were photos of me. Some were taken from behind. Some I didn't even remember being taken. There were photocopies of pages from my journal. A list. And then, at the bottom of the box, there was a single page. The handwriting was familiar. It was an old letter. The date was nearly 10 years ago, and it was from Abby to Michael. Inside the letter, Abby had poured out her heart. She wrote about how she had given up. So much. Her university dreams, her friendships, and even her relationship with me, just to stay home and take care of their father when he was sick. She had done it without complaint, telling herself it was the right thing to do, that Michael needed to go out into the world and live his life. But deep down, she had resented it. She had watched from a distance as Michael moved away, built a career, fell in love with me, and started a family. It was the life she had once imagined for herself, a life she had convinced herself she didn't need. "I told myself I didn't need it," she wrote, "that you needed it more. But I lied. Watching your life now, watching Sasha, it's like I'm staring through a window into a life I almost lived, and I can't stop reaching for the handle." I sat down on the bed, my hands shaking as I reread her words. She hadn't just admired my life. She had wanted it. She had wanted to step into it. And for a moment, she almost had. The next morning, I knew I had to tell Michael. I couldn't keep this to myself. I walked into the kitchen holding the letter, my heart pounding. When I showed it to him, I expected shock. I expected disbelief. But instead, he just sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I know," he said quietly. I blinked, confused. "You knew?" He nodded. "Our mom warned me before she moved in. She told me that Abby had struggled for years, that she had always felt like she was living in the background of my life. But I never thought it would come to this. I thought she'd be okay. I thought staying here with family would help her move on." His voice was filled with regret. "She sacrificed a lot for me," he added softly. "I didn't think she'd unravel." I looked at him, searching his face for answers, but all I saw was guilt. Abby left the next day. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. She stood in the kitchen, her hands resting on the counter, looking calm, too calm. "I realize this life isn't mine," she said, "and it never was." Then, without another Word. She picked up her bags and walked out the door. I expected to feel relief, but instead, I just felt empty. A few days later, I decided to meet her for coffee. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I just needed to see her one last time. Not as the woman who had tried to take over my life, but as my sister-in-law, as Abby, when she walked, and I almost didn't recognize her. She wasn't wearing any makeup. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her usual bright, confident smile was gone. She looked smaller somehow. "I'm sorry," she said before I could even speak. Her voice was quiet, almost fragile. She admitted that over the years, she had lost so many pieces of herself that she didn't know who she was anymore. Watching me, copying me, it hadn't been about taking my life. It had been about trying to feel okay. "I didn't mean to become you," she said. "I just wanted to feel what it was like to be okay." For the first time, I saw her pain. I saw the years of loneliness, the weight of sacrifices she had never been able to let go of. I told her about a therapist who had helped me once, back when I was struggling with my own fears and insecurities. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I think I need that," she admitted. "I think I need help." We sat in silence for a while, sipping our coffee. Then, as we stood to leave, she turned to me. "Thank you, Sasha," she said softly, "for seeing me, for not hating me." That night, as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed with a message. It was from Abby. "Thank you, S. I'll make an appointment. I'm nervous but hopeful." I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the words sink in. Somewhere, Abby was starting over, not as a shadow, not as someone else, but as herself. And me, I was still here, still Sasha, still whole.